guys, it's Willow, and today I thought I would bring to you a spooky story. I actually did write this one because I've seen a lot of people read other people's scary stories online, and I was like, well, I like to write, I might as well write one, and it's probably pretty bad. Franklin says it's definitely bad. And I didn't edit it too much, so keep that in mind. I am not used to working on a deadline, so we'll see how it goes. And I'm just gonna read it off my phone for you guys because I have it on a Google Doc. And I'm not sure if this is gonna be a one-part or a two-part video. I guess it depends on how slowly I read, which I am known to read pretty slowly. When I inherited the house, I thought fixing it up would be a good way to work through the grief. It was unsurmountable in its cold, dark envelopment, threatening to consume me entirely. I couldn't eat or work or socialize. My friends tried so hard to be there, to pull me out of it, but the thing was, I didn't want to be saved. The depression was like a sleeping pill. I thought I could lay motionless until my whole life passed me by and I could be with them again. Then the nightmares started, and they drove me out of my safe asylum. They would begin pleasantly. We would be in the car, Emily speaking in excited tones about the wedding venue with my mother. Their blue eyes would light up in the same happy blue. Suddenly I would hear the squealing tires, smell the burning tar of the brakes, and feel the glass hit my face. The gravity pulled my stomach in sloshing circles as we flipped over and over. It would end as quickly as it began, with the splash of water and deafening silence. I woke up each night, wet with sweat, gripping the sheets in tight fists. Each time I was left with their hollow absence. The whirls and creaks of the house were so loud. The space next to me in bed so vast and taunting. I don't know why I thought staying in that old empty house would be better. Maybe because it wasn't the one Emily and I had sown our dreams into? Whatever the reason was, I packed all my things, put the house on the market, and moved in one day. I suppose I was hungry for relief. So desperate I ignored the chill in my bones as I drove past the great iron gates. It was so much bigger than my mother had ever given tribute to. The massive brick building scowled down at me. It looked straight out of one of those cheesy horror movies Emily and I always used to make fun of. Twisted, thorny vines scurried up its sides like a declaration that I was most certainly not welcome. In my folly, I ignored them too. The final warning came when I opened the oak doors to have my first peer inside. It was like the whole house sighed. I was sure it was just a breeze, but it sounded so human. It even had the undercurrent of a woman's voice, rattling and long, like the last bit of air escaping her lungs. A low groan followed, rattling the pipes and grinding wooden beams in the ceiling. The whole building seemed to tremble to life. Even I managed to shudder in recognition of its ominous sound. They opened to an expansive room. Doors lined the walls on either side, like knights at their post, but the crowning gem was the immaculate double staircase resting directly ahead. Though it was blanketed with cobwebs, I could see potential in its rich grains and smooth marble. Red carpet, faded into a dark burgundy from the dirt, ran up its steps and down the halls as far as I could see. The thud of my suitcase against the floor caused a small tidal wave of dust and reverberated down the winding halls. I rubbed my nose quickly to block out the impending sneeze and took a step into the threshold. Sometimes I wonder if that was the moment I woke her up. I can imagine those spindly fingers crawling their way out of that black muck in the darkness. I picked the first room that looked suitable and got to cleaning it. Strangely, I could swear that a spot I had just cleaned would be dirty again the moment I turned around. It was probably just because I was so bad at cleaning, I thought. So I kept at it. Eventually, the mist spots stopped appearing and I allowed myself a breather. Unrolling the air mattress, I took a glance at my watch and gasped. It had felt like 2 or 3 hours tops, but somehow 12 had passed. Was I really this scatterbrained? Looking past the windows, I noticed that it was in fact pitch black outside. I wish that the windows weren't so tall, reaching from the floor to the ceiling. but I figured in the daytime it would be nice and I couldn't let that old fear of the dark catch me now. I was a grown man. A woman's fluttering exhale tantalized the back of my ear. Swatting at the sensation, I whirled around to find no one there, but there was a small puddle on the floor. I must have felt a droplet falling by. I threw a t-shirt from my bag over the spot. In the morning, I would have to check the roof and get supplies to patch it up with. It was too late to do anything now, and being a stupid bachelor, I forgot about packing any towels or pans to catch it with. I cursed out loud, wondering what kind of damage a leak like that would have caused over the years. I was still thinking of that silly little problem when my head hit the pillow. Somewhere in my subconscious, I was glad to be worrying about something other than my loneliness. It worked. For the first time in months, I didn't have any dreams at all. Instead, I floated in a deep, comfortable nothing. Some may have found it spooky or unsettling to not be aware of any sensations, but it was a welcome rest for me. Slowly, the nothingness melted away and was replaced by the warm glow of the ceiling lights. Had I left them on? Something in my limbs felt heavy and numb, like they weren't real. It dawned on me, as I curiously wiggled my toes, that I was still asleep. I recalled distantly something called a lucid dream. That must have been what I was having, although I had never had one before. I rose from the squeaking plastic of the air mattress and hopped down the stairs. The door was open, a few pebbles scattered in the doorway, leading out and to the left. Strange, I thought. I knew I had closed the door behind me. Why would dream me make that up? My eyes followed the scattered trail of pebbles. They led to a part of brush that had been worn down in a trail that was painted across an overgrown field. Almost in a trance, I lumbered towards the path. Stumbling in the darkness and into a small forest, I stilled my courage and pushed ahead. It opened into a clearing with a pristine lake lined by willow trees. The moonlight bounced off the waters in soft white light. A woman stood on its shore. Long blonde hair cascading in gentle curls as she stroked her stomach lovingly. At first, she just stared out over the lagoon, a peaceful expression gracing her face. Then she looked to me, and I felt a tingle of warmth grace my back. Her eyes were blue like Emily's, like my mother's. I'm due soon, but there's something I need before I can have him. She turned fully towards me, taking my hands in her soft fingers. It's in the lake. Will you get it for me? I found myself smiling and nodding dumbly. She flashed a row of pearly white teeth. Good boy. And the next moment I was standing in the lake, my feet sinking into the mushy clay. It began to draw me downwards, swallowing my ankles, my knees, working its way up to my waist. Its icy grasp numbed everything it touched until it flooded its way into my mouth, silencing my screams, and all the while she watched me from the shore, smiling. Every muscle tensed, and I jerked in the final thrashings before my vision could start to fade. I guess I gave up in that moment. What did I have to live for? This way I could see Emily and Mother again, and there wouldn't be any blame on me. But the woman wouldn't let me go that easily. She appeared before me in an instant, her hair drifting with the water. She looked like an angel, wiping away some of the mud from my face. Did you get it? My jaw felt stiff, a pocket of air forming around it to let me speak. I don't know what you want, I cried. My voice sounded so panicked and helpless, like I was a little boy again. Her face twisted into rage, flesh melting away and turning gray until she was a shallow, sinking skull, bearing pure anger down on me. My bones, she shrieked, her fingers digging into my cheeks. The mud moved again, hungrier this time. It crawled up my skin and blinded me, leaving me in a suffocating blackness. I could feel it creep up the back of my head and tangle through my hair until it joined itself and enclosed on the peak of my crown. It was like a door slamming shut right on my head, launching me through the blank abyss until I slammed down into my bed. The sheets had wrapped around me in my sleep and all but completely cut off my breathing. My body gave way to relaxation. I listened for a moment as the drumming of my heart slowed and quieted. The sun was up, flooding the room with light and helping guide me back to my senses. With precision, I entangled myself and sat up. It was a little disorienting to wake up after a bad dream in a place unfamiliar, but I was glad the mattress was too small to taunt me with any blank spaces. I hastily made myself presentable, wanting to start my day and clear my mind as quickly as possible. The door was wide open, just as it had been in my dream the night before. My pace slowed as I made my way down the steps and out the door. The path was still cut into the brush, but the pebbles were gone. My brain quickly changed the subject, reminding me that I needed supplies to fix that leaking roof, and I didn't have time to investigate. I jumped in my car and drove towards town. Surprisingly, the first shop I ran into was a hardware store. It was only about 5 miles from where the house was, and I thanked my lucky stars that they were so close. It was in a bad state of disrepair. The walls needed a good power washing, and the windows were mostly boarded up. The only thing that let me know they were still operating was a neon open sign shining in the door. I quickly gathered some tools and a bit of plywood, eager to get to fixing the roof before more damage could be done. But the cashier gave me a long sideways glance as I plopped my things on the counter. "Nothing out the way you came but that big old house," he mumbled to himself. I almost didn't realize he was talking to me rather than the ambience around us. "Oh yeah? Do you know it? I just moved in. It's in bad shape. I'll probably be here a lot." "So you're related to that fella that drowned his wife then?" he asked, like it was a question, but his tone was more of a judgment. "What?" I felt the blood drain from my face, remembering the nightmare I had just endured. "Yep," he sighed, scanning some items. "Man drowned his wife up there. Family moved out, but kept it in the bloodline. I suppose that would make you his great-great-grandson or something." My vision waned in and out as I stood there in silence. I barely noticed handing him my card and grabbing my things. It wasn't until I was almost at the door that he called out to me for one more word. "Say hi to the missus for me." "I'm not married," I mumbled. Equally as quietly, he muttered, "I know." I forgot to turn on the radio for the drive back to the house. I didn't need the noise. The ringing in my shocked ears was enough. My mind mulled over every sentence he had spoken, every ghastly image from the night before, until I found myself parked at the end of the driveway. Somehow, the house seemed expectant, like it had made itself taller for my return. Shaking my head, I lumbered in and looked around. Had it always been this cold before? Had the walls been so bleak? It resembled a mausoleum in this new light, and somewhere from within its maze I felt eyes on me. I shuddered. Maybe there was time to check out that trail after all. In the blink of the instant it took me to turn around, the sun went down. I froze. What had just happened? Was I skipping through time now? Was I still asleep? A trail of wet footprints led from my feet out the door, just like the pebbles had been placed. Maybe it was shock. Maybe I wasn't in control of myself anymore, but I found myself walking in their direction. Each step I took lined up perfectly with the prints, almost as if they were my own. Had I blacked out earlier and gone for a swim? There was no way that they could line up so perfectly with my gait. I wandered the route in a fog, not watching where I was going. Not that I could. It was so dark out, it was as if there wasn't even a moon. The only thing that told me I was even outside was the smell of night air and the crunch of dirt and sticks beneath me. As I reached the woods, I could finally see some light. It was as if the lake was glowing through the trees, silhouetting them like looming giants. They reached over me in a malicious regard, their branches intertwining with each other as if to block the stars from me. She was waiting there. Her face was back in its peaceful, if not distant, composure. She smiled at me over her shoulder, waiting for me to reach her side before she spoke. "You're back. Are you going to get them for me now?" Her eyes dulled, a white cloud forming over the pupils, that dead gray color beginning to touch her lips. That hunk of meat isn't holding you back now. You can get them for me." "What?" My brow furrowed, but somewhere I think I knew what she was saying. Time stopped as I turned my head towards the water. Something black floated there, something big and shaped like a body. My heart froze. It was most definitely a body. It looked like me, but its skin was white, its limbs motionless. The ringing came back, and my head felt like it was being split open. It was wearing my clothes, and on one of its fingers was my wedding ring. The next few moments only came to me in flashes. There was a man screaming, a burning in my throat as I realized it was me, and I was running at her, wanting to attack her, tear her from limb to limb. Then everything just went red. I don't know what's happening. I've been at the house for months now, but I can't seem to bring myself to fix it up or leave. The man who owns the hardware store stops by to gawk from the iron gates every now and then, but he never goes past them. That thing in the lake that looks like me has started to stink. Black water leaking out around it. I can't even bear to look at the thing, but I find myself there again every night with the woman. This is the longest nightmare I've ever had. It's like I'm in some twisted horror movie. I keep waiting for Emily to wake me up, but she hasn't yet, and I can smell the burning of tar. Alright guys, so that was my spooky story. Let me know how you enjoyed it and what you thought about it. If you think I should probably stick to my day job or not. I always enjoy writing. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm not very great at it, as you can tell, but you know, I've always been a huge fan of horror and all creepy stories that I can read either on creepypasta, or back in the day I would get in trouble for renting only the scary books from the library, and I've always just really enjoyed spooky things. I don't really like gore, but I like spooky. If this was something you enjoyed, if you would like me to write more stories or maybe even keep up the spookiness after Halloween is over, let me know in the comments down below, and make sure you like and subscribe because it really helps me and it helps Franklin out too. Look at that face. You can't deny him. Alright, that was really tough because I was pretty nervous reading it. I don't know if you guys could tell the way I was sort of breathless while I was reading, but I did still have fun. So, happy Halloween, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.